Dr. David Clark.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last Member of Parliament is spouting the same lines we've heard from this government for 8 years. We are hearing the mantra, but no one anymore believes the mantra because they cannot back it up with evidence. This government has borrowed more than Muldoon. The member referred to that, and it is true. And that is because they have not managed the economy well. Sadly, they have not done what is best for New Zealanders. They have not taken the opportunity to diversify the economy. They inherited zero net debt. Now it's up around $86 billion. $86 billion in debt. That is thousands of dollars for each and every New Zealander that they have borrowed. That is debt that will hang around the necks of future generations. The last Labor government, it grew the economy, and I wasn't there, so I can't claim credit for this, but it grew the economy by 25%. 25%, and that is by two different measures. I've done the analysis myself. 25%, and that is a quarter bigger than it was before that Labor government came in. It is possible to support health and social spending when you are growing the economy at that rate. Unfortunately, this government has the worst economic record of any government at all in the last 50 years. Inequalities are growing. Inequalities are growing. The home ownership rate in New Zealand is the lowest it has been since 1951. Since 1951, the home ownership rate has not been so low in this country. And it is little wonder that the OECD just over a year ago came out with a study that said the New Zealand economy has been held back by 15%, a whole 15%, because of growing inequalities in this country over recent decades. They know very well what contemporary economists are saying, that indeed, if you have all of your citizens contributing to the economy, it grows. It's not rocket science. If you have kids going to school hungry, they don't turn up then and learn at school. In fact, they're more likely to end up in the justice system because they are antisocial, because they believe society is against them. Well, actually, it probably is. It probably is if they go to school hungry. Their opportunity to learn and contribute is inhibited by growing inequalities. And we know also that people make choices when there are great inequalities that are about maximising their own lot rather than about contributing to society, because they are worried about the prosperity and well-being of those around them. And so they don't necessarily make the choices to follow career paths that are best for the wider society, and that is disappointing. We also know, on top of that, that infrastructure spending gets neglected by governments who are growing inequalities because the wealthy can afford the infrastructure they need through the private sector, and hang their heads they might. They've all got their heads down. I can understand it because they know it's true. They know that inequalities are growing under this government. We can look around the regions. Almost every region in New Zealand has a infrastructure for broadband below the national average. All of the regions have NZTA spending below the national average. They are focused on holiday highways in wealthy areas, and they are not focused on what will actually grow the economy. The OECD, the West's economic think tank, says that investing in the regions is the way to grow the economy. That's where the big gains lie, because you've got underutilised infrastructure. And I bet the member opposite for Waitaki appreciates that investment in her electorate would be a good thing. But instead, their government is neglecting investment in the regions. They're cutting funding to hospitals. Her own local hospital is under threat for its funding. And that is a shame. That is a shame in my view. The opportunity lies in the regions, and investment in the infrastructure in the regions has a more productive and larger return for less cost. And still, most of New Zealand lives in the regions. We can't afford a two-speed economy. Ask Aucklanders if they want more people to move in there. And most of them will say no. Actually, there's one right behind me backing me up on that. It's because it is over capacity. The infrastructure is there in the regions. It's good for the whole economy if we invest in the regions, and yet they continue to neglect them. This government continues to neglect those regions, ignores the OECD, ignores contemporary economists, and instead is focused on an ideological centralisation campaign that is straight out of an 80s textbook and proven not to work. So they are off track, and that will result, of course, as we're seeing, in increased borrowing, in a sluggish economy, and in a managed decline. And sadly, that is what this government is going to be known for when history reviews its progress. It started with such aspiration and promise, and New Zealanders are now disappointed when they see budgets that are focused on managed decline. The Labor government, the next Labor government, will restore the Kiwi dream. It will enable ordinary Kiwis to get ahead. We will make sure that ordinary Kiwis can earn decent wages again. We will be focused on diversifying the economy, on generating higher incomes, on generating jobs. We are the party that is looking at the future of work because we are forward-looking. We are an intergenerational party. We're not interested in short-term returns. We're interested in what is good for New Zealand in the longer term. These people are more interested, it seems, in getting re-elected. They borrow, and they borrow for pet projects like holiday highways, and they neglect the basic infrastructure that we need as a country, the broadband implementation, and so on, to get ahead. They're behind the eight ball, and history will find that to be true. We back an economy that works for all of us, but they're distracted as well, Mr. Speaker. I guess that's the other point I'd like to make. We've seen it in MB today. Minister Joyce confessed that he has known about payroll issues specifically brought up since last October, and when asked about the 2010 review, he fudged an answer. These issues that MB has with its payroll have been known about for a very long time. The private sector knows about it. There are payroll companies that advertise as their point of difference that they are compliant with the law. There are payroll companies that advertise as their point of difference that they are compliant with the law and the Holidays Act. This government has known about the issue. In fact, most government departments have been compliant on Holidays Act payments. Only Mr. Joyce's agency, which is responsible for overseeing the implementation of the Holidays Act, has failed, and also the police. The police have already addressed their issue. Mr. Joyce is dragging his toes again, and that sends an obvious signal to the wider public sector that they shouldn't have to fix up their problems too. But they are Mr. Joyce's making, because this should have been fixed early. They've been in government for 8 years, and yet they're dealing with the distraction of payrolls within government that don't even pay their employees what they deserve. This is going to be an issue that is worth tens, likely hundreds of millions of dollars to New Zealanders. They have been denied the correct back pay for Holidays Act entitlements. That's the kind of issue they end up dealing with, because they are not focused on what matters to ordinary New Zealanders. They end up fixing problems and not looking to the future and looking to how they can grow the economy like that last Labor government did. Labor has forward-looking policies. We will back the Kiwi dream. We will back New Zealanders who want to get opportunity through the tertiary education sector. We will provide fees-free education post-secondary for 3 years, and a plan has been laid out to achieve that. It is an affordable one. The member opposite brings up tax because his party has borrowed $86 billion, as I said earlier. I find it deeply ironic. $86 billion to fund the 2010 tax package that gave a huge tax break to the top 1%, while ordinary Kiwis got a smaller tax break that was more than swallowed up in a GST increase of 15%. That was a broken promise from Mr. Key. They are focused on making sure the 1% are looked after, and again and again and again, the rest of New Zealand are neglected. And that is, unfortunately, also those in the middle. So, Mr. Speaker, this government is distracted. We know they're focused on hair straighteners, barbecued Sundecks, Christmas parties with blow-up sheep. They're focused on doing deals with Sky City, which the Auditor General called neither transparent nor even-handed. They're distracted by all of these issues and not focused on the future. R&D tax credits around the world, the gold standard for encouraging innovation. What are they doing about that? Absolutely nothing. Silence from the other side. What are they doing about curbing property speculation? Well, we've just seen with the TPPA. They did not even ask. They did not even ask for foreign buyers, non-resident foreign buyers, to be banned from buying houses as a future right as a right for future governments to legislate about. Singapore, Australia, Vietnam, plenty of other countries asked to look after their own economic interests. This lot were asleep at the wheel. So, Mr. Speaker, it is blatantly obvious that they are focused on sorting out the problems that they have. They've got some trouble within their own ranks and some disagreements. They're starting to position because they know Mr. Key's popularity is fading, and they are not a government focused on the future. Labor government will ensure that the Kiwi dream is restored, that people can own their own homes again once more, and that New Zealand preserves its sovereign right and acts in the interest of ordinary New Zealanders, not just the 1%.